All right, back with another video on this channel. Today I want to talk about an interesting topic about related to identity. And where I'm really getting at in this video is the idea of looking at the dark side of identity change. When you're becoming a newer person, it's very easy to have this idealized version of yourself, where you believe that, this version of yourself maybe has no flaws, or this version of yourself can't suffer, because they're accomplishing so much, or their mindset is just so powerful. And that can be a trap within itself, because it goes back to that adage, new levels, new devils. And just because you have elevated in life, or you've elevated internally in some sort of way, doesn't mean that you won't still fall into some traps, or something still won't get at you. And one really prominent example when it comes to people becoming newer versions of themselves is the attachment to that newer version of them. They seem to they seem to be so identified with this new version because maybe it's very exciting, right? Um, and they get so attached to this new version of them to the point where if anything contradicts this new identity, they start having an identity crisis. And that's why when I talk about identity resonance and identity change, I say that the ego there's like two sides. There's like the ego is a two-edged sword, essentially. In one way, like identifying with the ego or moving through life with the ego can lead to you accomplishing a lot. It can lead to you overcoming adversity. It can lead to you setting boundaries. It can lead to you um, just pushing forward really well. But if you're too identified with it, you box yourself in so much that if anything contradicts who you think you are, then you may start having an identity crisis. So let's say um, you're just like, you view yourself as a winner, like you're just a winner. If you're so identified with winning, then there's a high chance that you may have a huge issue with losing. If you're too identified with winning and being in the ego when it comes to winning, you may have a big problem with losing, with facing loss in some sort of way. You may be so identified with with viewing yourself as a winner and people viewing you as a winner that you're like, you think of it so simplistically. So when you lose, you may start going crazy, you know? But if you are keeping one foot kind of in the ego and one foot out of it, where you view it from like the audience hall, it's something it's an analogy Vadim Zealand has made in his Transurfing in 78 Days book. He says that when we live our lives, we're both in the play and we're also the observer. Like we can be the observer of us. We can watch ourselves performing. And when we watch ourselves performing, we allow ourselves to not be so involved in the performance, in the ego. We can see it for what it is. It's just a performance. It's just a dance. It's just a character we're really playing, in the physical realm. And that allows us to be more malleable in how we respond to the world. So you can do both. Like you can both, for example, view yourself as a winner and still be able to accept loss. It's because you've gone more meta and you've like thought about it differently. Like, oh, like who am I that is losing anyways? What is this ego of mine that is losing exactly? Okay, this name, oh, this identity I've created is the one losing. Oh, boo hoo, it's the end of the world. And the ego views it as the end of the world because it's trying to survive conceptually as much as possible. And again, this is the dark side of identity change. If you hold your identity as such a pedestal, it can backfire on you, because if that pedestal isn't if if that identity isn't validated by a person, by a circumstance, now you might just feel awful, especially if you've reinforced it through time. And again, Reinforcing it is part of identity change, and this is why this is a very nuanced conversation. But the thing though is you don't just want to get too lost in it, right? You want to remember that it's malleable. Like, think about it. When you change as a person, like let's say you were person A and now you're person B. You're more confident. Maybe you're making more money now. You're more sociable. You're more in tune with your spirituality. Let's say this is the newer you, person B. You have to understand that there was a letting go process to go from person A to person B. It wasn't just I added new habits and I became person B. It was I let go of the habits and the ways of thinking that person A has. I essentially let go of the frequency that was person A. Now, for person B to go to person C, maybe he has to do more of a letting go instead of an adding on. And that letting go is what? Okay, let me let go of this strong attachment to this ego self of mine. If I go in the audience hall and I'm watching myself, I can see like just how neurotic I've become because I have embraced this, you know, B version of myself, this better version of myself. However, I'm so identified with it to the point where if I don't get some sort of validation for it, or life shows me the opposite, I may, start to go crazy. And in a way, I would say that you could also make the argument that the less shaken you are by the adversity of life, the less you need life to validate your identity, the stronger that identity is. You could make that argument too. Because someone that is saying that they're this person now, if they're so shaken up by something that shows them the opposite of who they are, then are they actually that person? Because if they know themselves so much, they wouldn't really care, or they wouldn't bat an eye. For example, I've cultivated confidence in myself for a very long time. If someone comes up to me and says, "You're not a confident person," it it wouldn't register because I have so many examples and evidence that I am. You know, it's kind of like you have red hair and someone comes up to you and say, "Hey, bro, your hair is not red. I think your hair is green." That just wouldn't register, right? It sounds ridiculous. I think at times when there's some insecurity about who we are, and then there's a circumstance that pokes at that insecurity, that's when we start to go a little crazy, you know. But this video is to essentially say that don't get lost in a new identity, right? That's the trap. Don't get too lost in it. No matter who you become, you're still acting out through the ego. And at the end of the day, the ego is false. It's a conception. We can use it as a tool to have the life we want and to just go towards our wants and desires. But there's more to that. And that's where spirituality comes in, like the other side of spirituality, not just like manifestation. Um, I'm talking like non-ego self, right? Non-duality. Understanding you're just energy that has manipulated itself into human form. And this human form did what? Became conscious of its surroundings, of itself. And this human form has, a mind, and this mind can be malleable and changed based on inputs, based on its environment. And this human self happens to be more receptive to information in its younger years, and then acts out on those initial data inputs later on in life. One of my favorite kind of thought exercises, I think it's called the blue dot, something blue dot, the blue dot experiment. I don't know. But it's essentially a picture of planet Earth really far away. And planet Earth looks so tiny. It's a blue dot. It's really small. And other examples of this are just when you look at videos where like you're zooming out of Earth and you're seeing how small Earth is and then how small the solar system is, and then so on and so forth. And you start to realize just how big the universe is. And then you start to realize that this significance that you've given yourself is so arbitrary. And in the grand scheme of things, doesn't matter as much as you think it does. The reason why people get so stuck in identity, or they don't even go for their goals, is because they think they're evidently, in the grand scheme of things, like, okay, let me put it like this: you're both important and non-important at the same time. The more you realize like that, like spiritual insight, the more calm you'll be throughout life. Like you're both important and non-important. The importance is the fact that you are part of the universe, um, and the non-importance is that there's so much in the universe that you actually don't matter as much as you think you do. And that's why I like teachings like non-duality too, because it allows you to go more meta and step out of identity, right? Not get lost in identity too much. Again, this is a nuanced thing. Identity change is important for having a happy, successful life and to be a match, an energetic match, a subconscious match to the circumstances, events, and people we want in our lives. But if we get too identified with those, with that version of us, we end up being so neurotic in being attached to that version of us, we can't see outside of it. We can't get in, we can't be in the audience hall, and that becomes problematic. And that could lead to unneeded suffering, really, at the end of the day. And I'm not talking from a soapbox. Like I've experienced this myself. Um, just being very careful that I don't make this identity too important, but while still seeing my importance, um, like egoically and non-egoically, my importance. So I hope this video found you well. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below, and stay tuned for more.